As we look at this text today, I was reminded of the movie Hoosiers. I don't know if you've seen this movie. It started Gene Hackman as a basketball coach in Indiana, in case you don't know where the Hoosiers are all from. And in this movie, he takes a team all the way to the state championship. Well, one of the members of his team is named Strap. And Strap isn't a starter on the team, but Strap has a faith in God. And Gene Hackman notices this faith in God the first practice they have, and they're in the locker room, and just before they go out, Strap kneels down and prays to the Lord. And the coach is looking at him, and he's going, "What's he doing?" "Oh, he's praying to God." He says, "Well, how long is he going to take?" "Until he's ready." You know, he's going to stay there until he's ready. Well, it comes to be one of the later in the season, and Strap is sitting the bench, and one of the starters gets injured, and so he has to come out. Well, Strap, I don't know if you can see that picture too well. Strap goes to one knee and he starts to pray, and Gene Hackman's going, "Oh, how long is he going to be?" The referees are saying, "Hey, come on, get in the game. It's time to start. It's time to go." Well, finally, Gene goes over to him and says, "God wants you to be in the game." And Strap jumps up and runs in, scores a couple baskets, unexpected baskets, and helps them win the game. And they go on to be state champions. The question that we have today is, are we listening to God? Are we listening to those people who speak for God? I don't know if Gene Hackman claims to be God or not. And I don't know whether he has an understanding of God's will or not. But God wanted Strap to be in the game and play. And Strap scores some baskets, helps win the game, helps win the season. Saul didn't listen to God. He may have gotten down on one knee, but I don't know who he was listening to. And so as we look at this one, we need to ask ourselves, who are we listening to? Are we listening to God, or are we listening to the world? If you do not know where God is, if you do not understand that God is speaking to you, it's not that God is not speaking to you anymore, it's that you have stopped listening. If you haven't seen God lately, guess who moved? Saul has some continued success against the Philistines. This was what he was called to do. He is a brave general. He's a great man. He's just not listening to the Lord. And the narrative seems rather ambivalent about Saul. By the way, the name of this art piece, do you like this piece of art? All the people who like it? All the people who don't? All the people who are ambivalent? The name of this piece of art is Ambivalent. That's why I picked it, because it's kind of ambivalent, isn't it? It's kind of gray, it's kind of light, it's got rust spots on it. It's really kind of ambivalent. And the narrative is rather ambivalent about Saul. He seems pious. He seems to want to talk to God, but then he seems confused, and he seems to not really want to listen. He's not so much wicked as he is foolish and frustrated. And so then we have Jonathan, who has a daring attack in this thing. He goes up to Mikram, and however you say that name, I don't know how to say it either. He goes up there, and there's some nasty cliffs in that area, and he has to climb up these cliffs, and he makes this daring attack, assault on these people, and wins the battle. And the Israelites rout the Philistines decisively. And then we find out that Saul has issued this ban on eating during the battle. Well, an army moves on its stomach, and this was a horrible thing. And so they don't have the victory that they should have because they were not able to pursue the enemy. This is the second in a series of 3 stories that we have about Saul. And it seems to just go downhill in each one of them. In the previous section, Saul failed to follow Samuel's instructions, and the dynasty was taken away from him. The kingdom was not wrenched from his grasp, but it was said that he would never have another son to sit on the throne. He was informed that his dynasty wouldn't endure. The great tragedy of that shows up in chapter 14 as we look at Jonathan, who would be an amazing king. He was everything that David was. He had had as much military success as David did, had as much heart for God as David did, and now we see the tragedy that Saul's choices resulted in. Jonathan would have been a great king. Now, father and son are being contrasted in this particular chapter because Jonathan followed after the Lord, Saul did not. Jonathan had great victory, Saul made foolish decisions. And we see this in order to condemn Saul. And chapter 14 ends with Saul totally isolated from everybody else. He isolates himself from his God, he isolates himself from his army, and he ends up isolating himself from Jonathan. Even his family were separated from him. So we start this chapter looking at this attack at the outpost at Michmash. It opens with this account of Jonathan's really daring raid against all kinds of odds. But Jonathan looked at that and said, hey, God can handle anything. He says, he's unimpressed with the numbers, undeterred because he believes in God. He says, nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or few. He doesn't care about the odds. He doesn't care if you're going up against a battle tank. He doesn't care if you're going up against Megatron. He doesn't care if you're going up against the Death Star. He doesn't care if you're going up against the supernova. God is bigger than all of these things. And it doesn't matter what the odds are. God can win by many or by few. No matter what the enemy is. If God is on your side, battle's over. War is done. The Lord honors Jonathan's leadership. 2 men alone kill more than 20 just at the onset. And the people go into a panic because they figure if 2 of them can defeat 20 of us, if that whole army comes over the hill, we're in lots of trouble. We're all going to die. It's showing what kind of king Jonathan would have been. And he would have been a great king. And we look back at Saul's decision and go, why couldn't he have just obeyed? Then we would have had Jonathan as our king to follow after Saul. But Saul is in Gibeah, and he's administering his kingdom. He's taking care of everything. He's ordering the army, and he's trying to make justice. He's trying to do all these kinds of things. And he's just sitting there doing nothing. When he hears that he hears that the Philistine army is being routed. And so he heads out. But in verse 3, there is a passing reference, and it just seems like an odd little verse, to a guy named Ahijah. Now, Ahijah is important to our story, even though it's kind of just a little strange thing. He's the royal chaplain. He's got his priestly robe on. He's got the Urim and the Thummim. If you don't know what those are, nobody else does either. But they were used to determine what God's will was. And they were carried around by the high priest, and whenever you wanted to know God's will, they consulted these, whatever they were. And God would let you know what his will was. He has a very carefully phrased genealogy. And that's something that the author wants us to pay attention to. He was the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub, son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. He is a member of the rejected priestly family of Eli. We had that story a number of weeks ago, where Eli is a horrible priest, and God says, your line is done. No longer will you be high priests in this country. He is the Ahitub's, not Ahitub, what is the guy's name? Ahijah, that was his name. I'm getting him mixed up too. Ahijah's uncle is named Ichabod. He was the guy that was born the same day that his dad died and his uncle died. He was the guy that died the same day his grandpa was born. He was born the same. Switch that. Turn it around. He was the guy that was born the same day that his father died.